Let's talk a little Bucks-Celtics because Boston is favored on FanDuel right now, even though the Bucks obviously have regained home court by splitting games in Boston. Are you picking them to win the series?
I'm still picking Boston. I mean, again, my biggest takeaway from the first two games was that it's not going to be easy. Not that I thought it would be easy. Easy is the wrong word, but it's not going to be quick. I thought Boston would win games 1 and 2, and I thought they'd lose game 3, then I thought they'd win games 4 and 5. Well, losing game 1 just puts you in the predicament where now if you lose game 3, you have to go back to Milwaukee for game 6. And next thing you know, this could very easily be a 7-game series. So I think it's going to be a longer series. However, I think Boston through the first 2 games has demonstrated that they are still the better team. It's just a closer gap than we originally thought. So Milwaukee's half-court offense was a little bit better in game 2. They were at 0.76 points per play in game 1. They were at 0.91 points per play in game 2, which is a decent number. The problem is Boston's offense also got better in the half court from game 1 to game 2, as you saw. And yes, there were some shooting results, like specifically in contested shots. They made 5 tightly guarded threes out of 7 tries. But the thing is like, if you're a Milwaukee fan, you can't take that to the bank because you were down 65-40 at halftime. So like, okay, let's pretend Jaylen Brown misses a couple of those threes that he made in the first half and like, a couple plays go your way. Okay, so now you're down 57-40. Like, it just doesn't make that much of a difference. Like, you got your ass kicked. You don't get to point at shooting when you get your ass kicked. Okay, like, yes, you made a little run in the second half, but I thought Boston was just trying to get out of that arena. Like I think they would have held up better physically if the game was in question in a way that it wasn't. Overall, in this series so far, Boston is averaging about 7 more points per 100 half-court possessions. That's something you can flat out take to the bank. Obviously, my biggest concern and the reason why Boston will probably lose another game at some point in the series, at least one more game, is they go through stretches where they lose their offensive identity. They go through stretches where they forget what has worked for them. This is the advantage of, again, those top 4 guys I was talking about, the Chris Pauls, the Lukas, the LeBrons, and the CP3s, or the Jokic's. They never lose their offensive identity. They're relentless with being smart. That's their advantage. They're chess masters. Well, pretty much everybody else in the league goes through like waxing and waning with their decision making. Well, Tatum in particular, and especially Jaylen Brown can both do that, where they just go through these phases where they start taking bad shots. There were some spots in the second half where Jayson Tatum was over dribbling a little bit. Like there's times where they lose their offensive identity. So they will have stretches where they go very cold. And when they do, Milwaukee will beat them because they're the defending champs and they're a very good team. But like right now, it's 1-1. The biggest challenge is they're going to have to win a game in Milwaukee. My guess is it'll probably be game 4. But the advantage for Boston, and the reason why I wouldn't count them out for game 3, is physical wear and tear is one of the biggest impacts in this series. It will heavily favor Milwaukee as things progress, but Boston has 3 days off between game 2 and game 3. They don't play till Saturday. So what a great opportunity to go into Milwaukee with fresh legs, getting Marcus Smart back, and steal back home court advantage. That's a great opportunity for them. So game 3 will be an interesting game to watch. But yeah, like I mean, it's a lot closer than it looked. Milwaukee fans should, if you're a Milwaukee fan, you should absolutely think that you have a chance to win the series because you absolutely do. Giannis is far and away the best player in this series, far and away the best player in this entire playoff run. He absolutely deserves to have that level of confidence. You know what I mean? But Boston's a better team. They've demonstrated that. They're scoring better in the half court. As long as they can keep the game in the half court 3 more times this series, they should win. And obviously there are weapons too, like Grant Williams and Al Horford are guarding Giannis in single coverage well. There are a lot of things that are going Boston's way, but there were some things that went Milwaukee's way in that second half. It's just a question of whether or not that stuff was real or whether it was related to Boston letting their foot off the gas.
You mentioned the impressive job that the Celtics have done on Giannis with kind of their multiple options there, and he's shooting sub 40% in the series so far, really struggling to score efficiently. How confident are you in Boston's ability to sustain that level, and do you feel like they've kind of solved Giannis in this series?
No one's going to solve Giannis. The truth of the matter is like, yeah, I thought that Boston did a good job of making Giannis settle early on. Like, Grant Williams and Al Horford both basically tried to stonewall Giannis on his drop steps, basically when he'd get him in the post and try to back them down, or when he would try to get ahead of steam and go. But I thought Giannis was too quick to give up on that. And especially in the first half, he was settling for a lot of jump shots and turnarounds and things like that in the post, threes, stuff like that. Giannis has a cumulative wear and tear effect. So the truth of the matter is no matter what Boston does, even if they do everything perfectly, if Giannis keeps dropping his head and trying to run people over, eventually he's going to break through that wall. He just is. So I don't think that it's possible to solve Giannis. But again, I think that Boston's the best defensive team of this era. I think that they're uniquely equipped to have bodies that can throw single coverage at him. I thought one of Boston's big defensive mistakes in game 2 was when they would get Giannis switched onto someone else, whether that was Rob Williams or Jaylen Brown. Those were the two matchups that Giannis was attacking the most off of the other two guys. In those situations, Boston was too quick to leave him in single coverage. I'd have a really simple rule. If he's on Grant, single coverage. If he's on Al, single coverage. Anybody else, doubling the shit out of him right away, get it out of his hands. That's got to be the strategy. And I think you'll see that as the series progresses. But overall, he's an unsolvable player, but Boston's going to do as good of a job on him as anybody else will be able to.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like we've seen that. But like you said, you can't really solve a guy who's 6'11", 240, and an absolute freak athlete in every way. But, I mean, they are doing as good of a job as anybody could.
Yeah, you know what's ironic is I would argue that the best defensive player in the world to put on Giannis would be LeBron. Because he has like the perfect combination of sturdiness and lateral quickness and just savvy and understanding of how to position himself between Giannis and LeBron or between Giannis and the rim. And I mean, obviously we got to go back to 2020 for this, which is at this point 2 years ago, but that performance that LeBron put on him in Staples Center right before COVID shut the league down was like one of the best defensive performances I've seen on Giannis. Just consistently, like, and LeBron's really good with his hands too, at like reaching without fouling and stuff like that. Like that's the irony, is he's the best player in the league to have that type of matchup. But that's LeBron. He's the second best player of all time. Here's the thing with Kawhi. Kawhi did a good job on Giannis in 2019, but that was a long time ago. And Giannis wasn't the same level of perimeter initiator that he is now. The other thing too is like he just doesn't have that same level of sturdiness as LeBron. LeBron's like a fridge. You're just not moving him off of his spot.